Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. BAM Weather Meteorologist Brett Waltz here, and in today's video, we are going to do a deep analysis of drought potential as we work into the latter part of spring and into summer. We have some new data in this morning that I want to share with you all, and some key research that I think is certainly notable and worth monitoring as we go throughout the warm season and the growing season of this year. So we'll target kind of the areas most at risk for drought potential. And I do want to start, though, on the note of where we are too wet right now and have had too much rain. And that's parts of the lower Ohio Valley into parts of the Tennessee Valley, Kentucky, down along the Mississippi River Valley region there. You can see all these ones that you see. That means that for the month of April, these districts are the wettest on record. Southern Indiana, Western Kentucky, Western Tennessee, but, top 5 wettest on record all the way down through southeast Missouri, Arkansas, kind of along the Mississippi River there. And some of these areas, especially west, will get a lot of additional rain over the next couple of days, which we'll touch on in a second. It's not been as active across the central plains and into the upper Midwest. Now, I do think that will change. In fact, it'll change as early as today with some severe weather potential here across parts of Iowa and Minnesota. But I do think that down the line, some of these areas could go back drier. I do think that it's very key over the next 10 to 15 days that these areas that have been drier will see moisture. And so that'll be something that we talk about later on in this video as well. A more zoomed in look at the wettest areas. This is just the last 60 days, the precipitation anomaly versus normal. We're talking about a good portion of western Kentucky here being 10 to as much as 17.8 inches wetter than normal over the past 60 days. That is insane, just to be completely honest there. But even all the way up through southern Indiana, southern Illinois, Ohio, we're 3 to 6 inches wetter than normal over the past 60 days. It's been extremely wet, and again, more rainfall in the forecast over the next several days. Here's a look at just March to April as a whole right now. You can certainly see it's generally been drier across the western belt, western plains, and into the northern plains through here, and it's been wetter in the eastern belt, which is pretty much what we had anticipated. And while I do think that the plains will see more moisture opportunities ahead, I think that the eastern belt will certainly be the region that, when all is said and done, has had by far the most rain this spring. Real quick, let's just take a quick look at temperatures ahead. We'll have another cold front as we work into the weekend. Temperatures back down into the 20s across the north central part of the country, continuing to be at or below freezing as we work into early next week before we start to warm things up by the 22nd of the month. Taking a look at the pattern out at the end of April, the signals are increasing that we start to get a little bit more of a consistent warm pattern the last week or so of April, especially maybe across the ag belt, the central to eastern part of the country. I do still see some cold fronts in here down the road. There's a front, this is around the 2nd of the month, that could bring in another frost threat for parts of the far upper Midwest and into the Great Lakes, maybe the Northeast. This will kind of be the region that these fronts have a tendency to sweep in, while the plains and areas down to the south likely stay a little bit warmer than normal. So, especially if you're across the central plains and the lower Ohio Valley, I think that will get more and more difficult to get more notable cold shots as we work into the start of May. Taking a look at temperatures over the next 2 weeks, guys, warmer than normal in the south and eastern United States the next 7 days. This is notable as we work towards the last 7 days of the month. Starting to see a more aggressive warm signal, 5 to 10 degrees hotter than normal across the central and the northern plains for the last week of April. That is something that needs to be monitored into May, because if we continue to trend warmer and warmer in these areas, if you recall, just we talked a couple of moments ago, these areas generally have been a little bit drier. That certainly could exacerbate drought risk even faster as we head into late spring and into early summer. Now, the good news right now, it does look like there's going to be moisture opportunities, probably in the form of severe weather as well for the middle part of the country. But I will note, you look at the week 1 time frame, this is an area that data has trended drier and drier, the north and west plains. I would not be shocked, you can kind of see this little orange circle here, I would not be shocked if this area continues to trend a little bit drier than what the model data indicates right now. And so Could we end up leaning a little bit hotter than normal and drier than normal as well in these areas that are already dry? It's not out of the question. We will continue to remain very wet, southeast plains and into the Ohio Valley, several inches of rain additionally, really through the weekend to add to some of the wetness in those areas. Taking a look at temperatures, we'll do 5-day chunks here just to give you an idea of the general pattern. Kind of cool west and warm south into the east. As we get into this 5 to 10 day time frame, we start to warm things up a little bit more consistently and a little bit more of a widespread nature. Then we work into this 10 to 15 day time frame, guys, and you can see here widespread warmer than normal temperatures, maybe even some much above normal temperatures in here before we have another little front that could knock temperatures down briefly to start out the month of May. This resembles our weaker than normal global wind pattern very well. That's our negative AAM. That also favors severe weather risk, probably really ramping up into May as well for the middle part of the country, but certainly a strong signal here for warmer than normal temperatures across the central U.S. as we work into the end of April and into the start of May. And I think that our tropical forcing may also be having an impact on this. We're kind of just sitting and spinning here with some thunderstorm activity in the western Pacific. If we take a look at what that typically means into late April, typically favors warmth, and I definitely think that this is having at least a little bit of a factor, maybe just amplifying the warmth even a little bit more to close out the month of April. Looking at the upper level pattern, guys, the Pacific Ocean here, we've got a relatively strong Pacific jet that's going to be funneling in warmer air from the Pacific. To me, this is certainly a severe weather risk in this region in here that we'll need to be keeping an eye on, and certainly will continue to favor some moisture opportunities. Now, I do think that down the road, as this ridge continues to strengthen, what will start to happen is your corridor of moisture will start to shift a little bit further to the north. A little bit further to the north. That will be something we need to watch down the line for the Central Plains, maybe even into the Ohio Valley, starting to get a little bit drier. And I think that we're already starting to see some hints of that with the extended range EPS data. This would be good news for these areas. Warmer and a little bit drier to get some planting done. I think that into early May, there's a better opportunity for that. What I would be a little concerned about with the warmth is, maybe some beneficial rains for the northern plains. Does this area in here, let me change out my color here to make this maybe a little bit easier for you all to see. This area in here, I would be concerned starts to get a little bit drier again. So, there's a window of moisture in here, but I'm skeptical on how long that it ultimately ends up lasting, which is important because if you look at the current soil moisture percentiles here, it's dry. The soil moisture as a whole, it was dry last fall. It wasn't a super active and snowy winter in these areas. And so the Dakotas, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, parts of Minnesota, even out into northern Illinois, these are areas that need to be monitored very, very carefully in terms of dryness ahead. On that note, let's look at what our global pattern drivers would indicate as we work into the summer months. And La Nina is gone at this point. We don't really have a true La Nina. The atmosphere lingering some La Nina conditions a little bit. And I don't see a big warm signal. I don't really see an El Nino signal setting up. We still have some cooler waters here in the Central Pacific, certainly a little bit warmer in the Eastern Pacific. But if you look at the upper ocean heat anomalies, in general, it's still cooler than normal. It's not in La Nina territory anymore, but I don't see a strong signal that we are going to rise into El Nino territory. Maybe warm neutral, but I wouldn't go much beyond that. And that's very important for the summer because years that go El Nino tend to be a little bit wetter. Years that stay neutral, slightly cool neutral, to warm neutral following a La Nina tend to be hotter and drier. The other key thing that I'm keeping an eye on, number one, we have a negative PDO, kind of this horseshoe of cooler air in the Pacific Ocean. We also are seeing warmer than normal temperatures in the East Pacific, off the coast of South America. If you take a look at the multi-model data as we work into summer, overall, Warm in the Central Pacific, it's going to naturally be too warm. These models are biased too warm, but really no big changes, I would say, in the Pacific Ocean. And generally neutral with maybe some slightly warmer temperatures off the coast of South America. Looking at years that match this the best, and again, these are going to be cooler in the Eastern Pacific, Northeast Pacific Ocean near North America, just naturally. And I don't really disagree with this type of a look either. If we go back over here, it matches it pretty well. Model data tends to be a little bit too warm with the ocean temperatures, but these analogs match very, very well to the oceanic signals. So cooler water in the North Pacific, the Central Pacific staying a little bit cooler, warmer water off the coast of South America. Top years that match this: 2021, 2012, 2011, 2008, and 2006. Well, if we look at these years for summer, it's a hot signal, especially across the central U.S., kind of like where data is already starting to get a little bit hot right now. And it's also dry, especially across the central part of the country. If we take a look at new data that's in as well, this is the IRI, a multi-model ensemble forecast. Look at where it's dry. Look how similar it is to this idea. And so we are still seeing a good agreement between model data right now and between analog signals. If you look at the aridity index, that's just the difference between the standard deviation and high temperature departure versus the standard deviation and precipitation departure. It's been a good precursor to drought concerns in the past. We're starting to see through this area in here that number increase, which means the drought risk is higher. If we take a look here, that we put this out earlier this month of where our biggest drought concern is, I don't really have anything to disagree with this on. I'm certainly concerned about drought intensifying and for it to be a hotter and drier summer across the Central Plains down through parts of the Southern Plains. I also think that in a more widespread fashion, there can be hotter and dry stretches across the Northern Plains, maybe even across parts of the Upper Midwest at times as well. If there's a risk to this, I think that it would be shifting this highest concern area a little bit further to the north. The only reason we don't have that right now is because some of the data, some of the analogs, like 2011, for example, did have this northwest flow track at times. And so could there be some timely rains to the north? That's possible. Regardless, I think a high impact drought is on the table heading into summer of 2025, which has been our forecast. This was our forecast for summer that we updated, our preliminary one. Hotter, especially across the plains, and a much below normal precipitation forecast for the north central part of the country. We'll have an update on this for clients on the Clarity platform over the next week or so, just an updated idea. We'll have updated corn and soybean yield forecasts as well. Right now, our forecast is about 5 below trend line for corn. And so, the signals remain. I really don't see any big difference right now from our preliminary research. And so just as a general update, I think that the drought concern and the hotter and drier risk into the summer is very much still at play. And I would say, if anything, confidence increasing on that a little bit. It is absolutely critical the next couple of weeks with a more favorable pattern to get some moisture in the plains. If that doesn't happen, it could get worse very quickly as we work through the rest of May and into the start of summer. Guys, that's all I have for today's forecast. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.